Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Thank you so much for all of your guys' support of the podcast, subscribing, rating, and reviewing. It's been absolutely incredible to see the response as we get into the meat and potatoes portion of the season with football on the horizon. Everybody, we are under 3 weeks away. Cannot be more excited for it. I think we're 19 days away from Portland State today. It's been coming for a long time, but very, very excited for the season ahead and hope you guys will be along for the ride as every day is right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. All right. Talking about BYU's offense and then flipping over to the BYU defense coming out of their first scrimmage, Kalani Sitake was pretty effusive in his praise for BYU's defense. He said that Jay Hill and his staff will probably have some things they want to improve on, but he says they performed extremely well. And that is good news for BYU, as the biggest concern, I think, for the Cougars going into the 2025 season, as unsettled as things may be at the quarterback position, one thing that can help a quarterback who may have to prove themselves and really settle in early on in the season is having a top-notch defense to go out there, hold the opposition down, and if you can grind out, let's say, 24 points, etc., find a way to win football games. One of the pillars of success that former BYU coach Bronco Mendenhall, now Utah State Aggies head coach Bronco Mendenhall, once said is that he expected his defense to hold opponents under, I think it was 24 points, and he expected his offense to be able to score at least that many to help BYU win games. And his career record would indicate that that pillar seemed to be absolutely in effect. And I think that's what Jay Hill, similar, he might not have the actual number he has in his mind, but I think he wants his defense to perform as well, if not better than they did a season ago. And by all metrics, at worst, this was a top 40 defense that BYU had last year. I would consider it a top 25, but they want to up the ante. I had a member of the BYU staff talking with them. This was probably almost 2 weeks ago now in the lead up to training camp, who said that, hey, I'm not all that concerned about the offensive issues right now because on defense, we'll hold down the fort as long as necessary. Okay, well, that's the case. BYU is going to be in pretty good spirits, all things considered. There's obviously the give and take when your offense struggles against your defense and vice versa. There's going to be concern on whichever side of the football struggled the most. But I think the bigger point here is BYU reloaded a lot of what it lost on defense, particularly along this defensive line. And according to Jay Hill, the one missing element in everything BYU has had in what has been otherwise an elite defense under him over the past year plus has been a pass rush issue. They have not been able to generate the havoc, depending on who you talk to, that they have wanted in terms of strip sacks, sacks in general, just making opposing quarterbacks feel uneasy or uncomfortable in the pocket when it comes to the passing game. Well, according to Jay Hill, that may have been rectified, and here's what he had to say about what he expects from BYU's pass rush this season.
Maybe one of the places I'm most happy with is our pass rush looks different right now than it did last year. We got some dynamic guys off the edge. Some of those young bucks that we recruited the first years I was here are starting to show up, and I can't wait to watch them in the game because the pass rush looks good right now.
The pass rush is looking good, unquote. If that is what Jay Hill is saying is 100% true, and Jay's not a guy, in my experience, having covered him in his time at Weber State and now 3+ years at BYU, he's not a guy who's prone to saying things that aren't true. That's one thing that Jay is not about. He's not going to go out there and blow a smoke where it shouldn't be. I think he believes that the pass rush, even as revamped as his defensive line is, a lot of young talent on the edges, Keanu Tanuvasa, Anisi Purcell, John Tamoya-Peau leading the way on the interior for BYU at defensive tackle. I think he fully believes, or at least what he's seeing on the field right now indicates to him that BYU's pass rush is actually going to be able to generate, a pass rush this year. That would be awesome because BYU was elite at takeaways last year, getting all kinds of interceptions. And when it comes to defending opposing passing games, either you need an elite pass rush or pretty good coverage in the secondary. And I think last year, their success against the pass came mainly because they had a pretty darn good secondary. You had 22 interceptions, if I recall correctly, for BYU during the 2024 season. Well, if BYU can continue to have a pretty strong secondary, and all reports indicate that the safety tandem of Tanner Wall and Raider Damuni, backed up by guys like Tommy Prasis, Falatau Satuala, and Talon Alfrey, that's going to be just fine. The top end of BYU's cornerback unit, Maury Bamba, as well as Trey Alexander and Evan Johnson, I think they're going to be just fine on the back end. But if you can add the pass rush element that gets to opposing quarterbacks and makes their life a nightmare, that's going to make BYU even more ferocious. They were really, really good a season ago, despite having some undersized defensive tackles in John Nelson and Blake Mangelson. Now that you have a Keanu Tanuvasa who looks like a man amongst boys out there, is making life extremely difficult for what is a pretty good BYU offensive line. Yeah, I understand why there would be a lot of optimism for this BYU defense, and there should be. And if they, as the person told me, have to, quote, hold down the fort, unquote, until BYU's quarterback situation resolves itself, even if it's the early part of the season before it ultimately resolves itself, they're taking on that challenge and they want to one-up themselves from last year. That's awesome. That should engender a lot of confidence from you as Cougar fans about what this BYU defense can be. Jay Hill has what he wants to run at BYU fully implemented. He's finally getting the guys that they have recruited to the system back off of missions and getting fully up to speed in this defense. And if Hunter Clegg, Tausili Akana, the other defensive ends out there, guys like Ephraim Asiata, etc., come and really provide the pressure off the edge that BYU's defense has been sorely lacking since Jay Hill arrived in Provo, man, yeah, this defense, it could go from top 25 to top 15, dare I say top 10. That's the type of potential it has. It's got elite linebacking play. It's got guys like Isaiah Glasker and Jack Kelly who are set to reprise their roles, and there should be no drop off there. As I mentioned, the secondary, there was a bit of a revamp at corner, but you've got two very capable guys at minimum in Evan Johnson and Maury Bamba, backed up by guys like Trey Alexander, who should hold up. The safety room, that goes 5 deep, as Jay Hill said, with at least 2 more he feels like are knocking on the door of getting into the mix there. Everything indicates that BYU's deep, it's talented, and they're hungry to go out there and really assert themselves once again. And that should make you happy as a Cougar fan. It should have you thinking, all right, even if the offense has its issues, especially early on in the season, if the defense can hold up its end of the bargain, score some points, heck, do whatever they're going to do, that should help BYU have success, albeit looking a little different than maybe it did a season ago, whereas the offense at times carried the load early on in the season. This year, it could be the BYU defense carrying the load early on while the offense gets settled. All right, we'll finish up today's show coming up next by talking with a guy that I am interested to see how he ultimately does, because he has been up against it playing defense during his time at BYU. He's a son of a BYU legend, but his dad is a former offensive star for BYU who's trying to make his imprint on defense. Well, he has now moved over to offense. And what does he hope to prove at a position that's wholly different from his brother and his dad's? Well, Preston Rex can explain exactly what he hopes to prove at running back for the BYU football program, and he'll do that next right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.